Hello and welcome to After Hours. And I know it's been 2 years since I last recorded an episode, and I originally planned for at least like 10 episodes before I dipped. Because I know I'm quite non committal, and when it comes to projects that I start, like, hear me out. If you're here and listening to this episode, that is probably going to be unreleased. I am currently experiencing a fever, and that's hot. Shout out to Paris Hilton. Shout out to Paris Hilton's newest album, the cover of which is AI generated. And I don't even know the title of the album. It is like, I saw the preview or the countdown on YouTube. And I have this one image cemented in my brain of like a comment saying, and I'm quoting this, "I am crying. Why does nobody give a fuck?" And no one heard anything from her. Like, she made an album, dropped like a YouTube visual, and then dipped. And she's probably out there somewhere doing like philanthropy and stuff. And I don't know, she had like a little bit of resurgence in popularity. I think about 1 or 2 years ago when she walked for Versace. Yeah, and it was objectively terrible. But shout out to Paris Hilton. Yeah, I'm having a fever, and in order to not get stuck in the cycle of being bedbound, weak as fuck, rotting in my brain, just consuming reels or YouTube shorts, I am here creating this episode that is not going to be out probably, but I'm trying to get back into that space of creating, like, without over scrutinizing my work or just over editing and then eventually not putting anything out. And this is going to be a very filler and maybe beautiful sort of diary-like episode. So if you are still here after like 3 years, what the fuck are you doing? But thank you. And it's only going to be 3 minutes, so it's going to be quick. I'm going to try to make it quick. And hopefully it's going to feel like, once again, a late night conversation with a friend over a drink. And that's basically what After Hours is. And sometimes my students still ask about my Spotify podcast. And when I think back about, like, essentially putting out 2 episodes and then getting in the top 30 most shared worldwide, that's crazy. That is crazy. I had like 2 or 3 episodes out at the point. And one of the reasons why I stopped doing it is because it was taking too much money per month to host my episodes on Spotify. And like, one of the reasons why I wanted it on Spotify was because I needed to legitimize the podcast. Because anyone can put anything onto SoundCloud. And like, to be fair, who is still using SoundCloud, right? The people are slowly paying the bills to purchase a Spotify subscription. And to be honest, it's not even that expensive. But one of the reasons why I stopped doing the podcast is because of, like, how really expensive it was just to maintain it on Spotify for like every month. So at one point I considered moving this thing onto YouTube but I didn't end up doing that because I went to work. I constantly wonder how many great creative minds have been squashed by the necessity of earning money and going into a stable job. And here's the thing. When I was creating these podcast episodes, and I keep saying this, I was 75% unemployed. You cannot look and hear these podcast episodes and think to yourself, that's employed behavior. And I'm only saying that because, to be completely honest with you, when I was creating these podcast episodes, I was only working part-time 3 hours a week. Can you comprehend that? 3 hours a week. I didn't have to keep repeating that, but I was thankfully supported by my family and, comfortable enough. So I fortunately didn't have to go to work at the time. And me working for only 3 hours a week was just for pocket money. So I understand and I realized that I was in a very fortunate position to be able to say this now. But, during the time that I was unemployed, that was when I was the most creative. Like I had ideas just come to me and I was able to stay present and not spend my time rotting my brain just passively consuming, because I think it's not just me, but like a lot of people out there. And if you had to stay present and filter out all the noise that's happening all around you, then I feel like you would be able to create a vast variety of art. You just have to be like maybe at least like 75% unemployed to be able to create this type of art. The audacity of me comparing what I do to art, that's crazy. Anyway, relating to art, I had a makeup account, which looking back on it, I was very skilled. I was skilled enough that Robert Welsh followed me. Robert Welsh followed me at one point. But there were a few things when I was like, I wasn't being completely myself when I was creating those looks. I was sort of like chasing what was, or what I thought at the time was the popular thing to do. So back in those days, it was water-based liners and very colorful and like structural eye makeup. And I wasn't completely comfortable with appearing on camera. And just, anything that I did goes for both that makeup account and this podcast as well. I kept overly scrutinizing myself. And that's my downfall. I think every creative person does this at some point, just like over scrutinizing myself, and then to the point where creating wasn't enjoyable anymore, and so I just didn't end up putting anything out. And with a probably unreleased episode, I want to be unabashedly just creating something and have it be shit and put it out anyway. And the girlies who get it will get it. I don't even have my usual Yeti microphone set up with all like the noise filtering apps and stuff. So there's gonna be background noise, and the ambience of this video is going to be so shit. But you know what? It's fine. When I had the time and I didn't have the pressure of like going to work and performing the same routines and socializing, not only was I a lot more creative, but my podcast episodes had so much structure to it. I remember like I wasn't even an expert on any subject matter. And sometimes it's still so scary for me to listen back to some of those podcast episodes. I've never fully listened to a podcast episode that I put out. Like once they're on Spotify, like they're out of this memory. And no, but I remember none of the podcast episodes took a huge amount of research. So it's not like it's not like it was a podcast with a certain set topic or niche. Like it had no niche. Let's be honest. It had no niche. But the genre of my podcast, and I remember, was comedy, because every single episode was kind of meticulously scripted to the point of sounding like a stand-up set. And I remember when I was writing or like scripting those episodes and the jokes in it and how I'm going to structure it, not only did I have to re-record so many times? Because full transparency, my podcast is one take. So like if I screw something up, I just have to re-record it. And then I ended up telling so many of the same jokes so many times that sometimes it's like the laugh fades. and but I was like so dead set on scripting those episodes like that, and then I was also mighty confident. Like I thought to myself I could eventually at some point do stand up because they were in essence scripted comedy to make you laugh and feel relatable. And then I remember thinking, maybe I could eventually just walk into an open mic and just perform and say whatever I think. It was like I would speak my thoughts into a stand-up routine. And now that I am a government employee and I'm working, I regret leaving that part of me behind, like just years ago. Like the last podcast episode happened, and I still have in my drafts the next episodes that I wanted to come up, and I just never got around to recording them. It's not just because of the subscription price of like hosting audio files on Spotify, but I also started working as a teacher. And I gotta say, when you pick a career, like a stable job that you're gonna do for probably the rest of your life, you don't necessarily think about picking a perfect career when you love going to work and where you're always going to feel energized to do the things that you have to do, because you're human and also you change. Not every job or any job actually is going to satisfy all of your criteria of being, good for your mental health and also good for your pockets. And I have to say, like, one thing about being a teacher, especially in my country, especially like in an Southeast Asian country, there's this specific image that I have fostered in my brain about what a teacher looks like, acts like, and does. And being creative and out there and cussing on the internet sometimes it's just so far from that image. And sometimes I honestly find myself, and I don't know if you can relate to this at all, but there's this part of myself that does not identify with the work that I do at all. Like I'm one of those people who does not want to be defined by what I do for a living, because I'm so much more than that. It's just something that I can do to make a living and pay my bills, of course, but I've never wanted to be defined by my job title of being a teacher. And sometimes I have to bring this up again because I have unfortunately made the mistake of telling my students that I have a Spotify podcast. And sometimes my students still ask for the name of the podcast, which I refuse to give them because I don't think that the parents are going to be very happy to hear that their kid's teacher talk about pop culture gossip online. It's just not a professional look. And I'm pretty sure I cussed. Definitely in this episode, I cussed. And that's not good for the kids either. But it's just that, well, anyway, I am glad that I named my podcast After Hours. Because if you search for After Hours, the first thing that's going to come up is the Weekend album. I think so. I hope so. And, I mean, of course, one of the reasons why I picked the After Hours name was to bury it in search. But I also just really liked like the chill, laid back, banterish vibes of like After Hours. Just, conversations with a best friend. well, maybe not the best friend, not like bestie best friend, but because we're not that close, but a close friend. So, conversations with a close friend over a drink after work. I think that's what I said in my first episode. And I still like to do that now. I still want to do that now. Hopefully, some of this has been relatable to you, and you have found some value in listening to this 15-minute audio clip that is about to be 60 minutes, probably, as I keep rambling on. And, okay, maybe last thing before you go. I was going to talk about things that are air fryer steak vibes. Hear me out. I saw this on YouTube Shorts, which I'm gonna have to confess that I have fallen into the rabbit hole of film summaries or film clips on YouTube Shorts, and it is utterly corrosive to my brain. However, the other day, I saw someone making air fryer steaks. Just the mental image of air fryer steaks. Is it edible? Sure. Do some people do it? Unfortunately. Yes. Unfortunately. But is it fucking appalling? Yes. Like, why would you do that? And I was gonna take an example of going to work and how much that resembles air fryer steaks. Because you're just trying to get by in the way that you would. But, yeah, I thought to myself, I actually want this to be unstructured and see how it goes. Maybe, like, not take too much effort. The audio is definitely not going to be the best. You're going to hear a lot of background noise and some of the sounds that I usually would filter out, like me opening my mouth. Oh God. And because I laughed into the mic, that probably just gave you a spike in the audio. But thank you for being here. And if I ever decide to post this at all, then maybe I would be in a better headspace. And maybe then we would all be in a more hopeful headspace.